Okay, hit the button. Yeah, doing the Thunder 40 thing. Anyway, magnesium. Yeah, I think that's where we are. Number 12, I think. Yeah. Um, yeah, there's this stuff inside of our metabolism and stuff. It's really part of our basic mechanism of energy transfer. There's a lot of magnesium switching back and forth kind of stuff, isotopes and whatnot. I don't know all that shit. But it's basically a metal, like aluminum. So I mean, if we were to kind of think of ourselves in that machine sense, magnesium would be the metal. I mean, that's like the metal we're made out of, is magnesium. So like aluminum people, we could be magnesium people. But aluminum would be cooler, but we're stuck with magnesium. Um, it's it's in lots of stuff. Make antacids out of it and stuff. uh, I know it's something else it does. Can't think of it right now, but yeah, it does some other crud. They actually made. I was reading up a little, and they made race cars out of it for a while. An alloy, and car engines, Volkswagens. They use magnesium. It's very lightweight, and it's pretty strong for its weight. A good ratio there. But the problem is, it does have a low burning point. It's not even a melting point; it's a damn burning point, and so it'll catch fire. So unlike aluminum, you would have to worry about your car catching fire, and the car will burn like a piece of wood. If it gets high enough temperature, the magnesium will just burn. So that's not too good. So that might be why humans burn now and then. The fat burns, but maybe it's the fat, it's magnesium in the fat or something. I don't know, just speculating. Um, yeah, but anyway, sorry, I'm burning my lips. I've been smoking too much, and the thing gets too hot, and it burns my lips. Mm. Yeah, I got some new juice. It's kind of better, so I'm feeling a little better. I got some of this Wicked stuff. It's called Wicked Eat Liquid or something. Totally Wicked. Yeah, that's what it's called. It's a website, something like that. I wish they don't write very good English. They're trying to be stylish. You can't even read this shit. But anyway, instead of like 24 milligrams, it's got 36 milligrams of nicotine, something like that anyway. So yeah, I think that's what I needed. It's that little extra, and it's the PG stuff rather than the VG stuff. Instead of making it out of vegetable oil, they make it out of that polyethanol glycol crap. It does seem to make a difference. I mean, I think the nicotine transfers better in that medium. So anyway, I've been mixing the two of them together, and so that works out. The whatever the other stuff was, Vape Pure. But yeah, I definitely go for the PG better. It doesn't smoke as thick, but it does. It works better. Mm. Yeah. I feel it better. Anyway, just enough of that. Just e-cigarette news. Shouldn't waste the video with that crap. Anyway, let's get to business. Well, yeah, YouTube's doing one of their updates, so this is what I'm going to do instead. White people laugh at creationists. Part 25. I did a lot of these.
No matter how many molecules you can produce with early Earth conditions, plausible conditions, you're still nowhere near producing a living cell. And here's how I know. If I take a sterile test tube,
well, look, his statement is basically true. I mean, I agree with him. I mean, it doesn't happen easy. That's for damn sure. But the idea that God would create human beings is just utterly ludicrous. And it doesn't answer the question, who made your God then? I mean, the idea, okay, this is not complicated, you creationist people. So you really can't use this argument that life is too complicated to be created by nature. Well, God is even more complicated, right? Because God can create life. And so you're just basically saying, well, I can defend the idea of a God that poofed out of nowhere. Well, then why can't we just make the same argument that life poofed out of nowhere? I mean, if you're going to make the argument that God came from nothing, right? I mean, God didn't give, it wasn't like double God that gave birth to God, was it? Or it was triple God and then quadruple God? I mean, you're just not answering the question. So something had to come from nothing. You can't just use this excuse that God always existed, because then you got to explain what he was doing forever, okay, before he got around to doing the human planet thing. What was he doing forever before he decided to do that? Huh? Challenging question, isn't it? Yes, it is.
I put in a little bit of fluid with just the right salts, just the right balance of acidity and alkalinity, just the right temperature, the perfect solution for a living cell. And I put in it one living cell. This cell is alive. It has everything it needs for life. Now I take a sterile needle and I poke that cell, and all its stuff leaks out into this test tube. You have in this nice little test tube all the molecules you need for a living cell.
Oh, this really is a bogusly stupid argument. Yeah, you got a human being, you know, you're not going to be able to make a human being out of the guts. I mean, a cell is not rudimentary, uncomplex chemistry. It's incredibly complex chemistry. It took a long time just to evolve one of those. So it's just kind of silly. It's incredibly silly.
Not just the pieces of the molecules, but the molecules themselves. And you cannot make a living cell out of them. You can't put Humpty Dumpty back together again. So what makes you think?
Well, you know, that's right there. Yeah, we can't do it yet. But, you know, there might be a time when we actually can put Humpty Dumpty back together again, where we can take the rudiments of that cell, those parts, and we can form them into a new life form. Okay, so that's conceivable. So you're just arguing, well, you know, you could argue before 1969 that we never land on the moon, so therefore we'll never land on the moon. That would have been really ignorant and stupid, wouldn't it? Yeah, it would have been.
That a few amino acids dissolved in the ocean are going to give you a living cell. It's totally
You're being ignorant. You're being ignorant.
unrealistic.
In simplistic terms, these creationists seem to think that the mere existence of an irreversible reaction disproves evolution. The answer to this specific question is, of course, trivial. The bacteria is not a simple organism. It's a grizzled heavyweight that survived 4 billion years in an environment of harsh competition, and is one of the most durable.
Yeah, I don't know, 4 billion. I don't know about that. But anyway, we'll just concede the point. But yeah, he just said exactly what I said, so I agree with the PhD this time. Science does not suggest the spontaneous formation of modern bacteria. That's certainly true. No, science doesn't just even suggest it. It doesn't even say that. Yeah, it doesn't even come close to even implying that bacteria was the first living thing.
Organisms on Earth. Now, perform this same experiment with the bacteria's primitive relatives 4 billion years back, in the times when it was debatable whether it should be classified as life or merely a few primitive, inefficient, self-replicating reactions, and this would have arguably produced a different result.
Yeah, arguably. Yeah, that gets a little complicated, though. I mean, you know, there is a point where it has to do the self-sustaining reproduction thing with the DNA copy. I mean, without the DNA copy, it's the difference between a living thing and a sperm. You know, I mean, you gotta have your own DNA, or you're really not a living thing. I mean, a sperm looks like a living thing, but it doesn't do any. It can't reproduce itself.
Further, such an experiment should really take into account the planetary quantities of organic matter on Earth, not merely a test tube. Most of the organic matter on Earth was organic long before it was living organic matter.
Yeah, but then you're not going to argue. You know, you're not going to answer the question that leads to is why, if there's so much of this stuff, why did it only happen one time? One time.
There was still about 500 billion tons of organic matter on Earth before life. And for those who are kind of fuzzy what organic matter is, it's largely any compound of carbon, methane, ethane, methylamine, methanol, etc. And in the molecular composition of the universe, these compounds are not even remotely rare. However, in metaphorical terms, claiming...
Yeah, but reproducing life is rare. That's the whole point. I mean, it happened one time on all the history of all known material events. We've only seen it happen one time. We only have evidence of one event. One single event.
The inability of an irreversibly burst cell to reassemble as proof that abiogenesis is impossible is like claiming that if Galileo and co-workers were given a laptop with all the knowledge necessary to build a space probe, then their inability to build that space probe, basically an irreversible reaction, would prove that it's impossible to build space probes.
Wow, that was really weird. Why wouldn't they be able to do it? If they had a laptop and all the instructions, then they would be able to do it. So that didn't really make a whole lot of sense. Does that make sense to you? That was kind of like the wrong example to use. The better example was if I run over a human with a steamroller. I ain't putting that back together either.
Galileo lived in the days before electricity, before the days of the discovery of atoms or even chemistry, before the days of Newtonian physics, all those tough rules of motion like the harder you shove it, the faster it moves, and if you don't do anything to it, then nothing happens.
Well, this is kind of a silly argument, too. I mean, it's a legitimate gripe, okay, for people to have to say, with all our technology and crap, I mean, we landed on the moon, did the Hubble thing, nuclear power plants, nuclear bombs, all this kind of stuff. You think if, we would be able to figure out this stupid little mechanism, that made this life thing. But yeah, it's just an expectation that doesn't have any rational basis. We have no way to judge the difficulty of it because there's no way to judge. We only have the one sample, and we don't even have the original sample. We just have the indirect collateral samples.
Rules of motion that took civilization about 4,000 years to work out. Before the days of mechanical engineering and materials, before the days of water treatment, in the days when the only things that flew were birds and so on. Now put that same laptop in the team of NASA engineers and they could easily construct a probe. But to Galileo and co-workers it would have been a few hours of magical light, and then after that an interesting sculpture made of bizarre metals and strange non-wooden materials.
Well, whatever. This is a very convoluted way to argue. So you mean you gave him a laptop and you just showed him images of a satellite and then said build one? Is that what you're arguing? So you didn't give them the plans, you just gave them a picture of one and said, do it? Oh, I see.
Indeed, the growth of knowledge makes an interesting metaphor for evolution. Good ideas are kept and propagated in the collective mind of the superorganism, while bad ones are generally discarded.
Yeah, well, that's kind of bogus now, isn't it? We tend to just keep things we like, because it makes us feel good. And that's how we end up being fat pigs and all that other kind of crap that happens to us. Yeah, so that's kind of bullshit, isn't it? I mean, it's sort of bullshit. The good ideas, the cream doesn't rise to the top, the fat does. And then we just wallow in the fat.
It is primarily this informational evolution that has built our civilization, which we are almost entirely dependent on. However, our dependence on the infrastructure is also a weakness of the superorganism. Destroy the infrastructure, and crucially the knowledge to rebuild it, and we live like tribal apes again. This point is something I was made aware of in my youth.
It's kind of funny that you use the same images over again to make different points. I mean, before, this was like some sort of sacred human thingy going on here, and now it's just dumb ape men, this lost tribe. It's probably just a bunch of propaganda anyway. They're probably just a bunch of guys in suits or something. But anyway, this one was in the dark makeup. I remember him. How come they haven't done any flyovers again? I mean, how come we always have the same images of these guys? Why don't they fly a little helicopter over them again and see what they're up to today? See if they got themselves a McDonald's yet. Little golden arch on their little shut.
When I was growing up in the UK, there was a real threat of a third world nuclear war.
If attack is imminent, you will hear the attack sound like this.
Oh, whatever. This is kind of drawn out, isn't it? And there really wasn't a whole hell of a lot of crisis. Even when there was a crisis, it really wasn't a crisis. Come on. It was more a little huff and puff.
We had what was called the 4-minute warning, which was about the warning you would get before the nukes started going off in the UK. Most of the public warning videos focused on what those near the target should do, and what those downwind of them, who would get whacked by the fallout, should do. However, the macroscopic calculations were different. What would be truly devastating for the UK was not the blast or the fallout, but the destruction of infrastructure. The UK current...
Well, that isn't true either. Come on, the fallout would have been really bad news. It would have made everybody kind of sick and incapable of functioning, and it would have just, you know, you would have been glad that there was no running water anymore, because you would be glad to be dead.
There's a population of about 60 million. Without the infrastructure, electricity, water supply, unhindered modern agriculture and imports, it can support about 6 million. The approximate death toll from a nuclear strike and fallout would kill about 10 million. The significant majority would have died from the loss of infrastructure. Without the infrastructure, the superorganism cannot survive in its current state.
Well, this is an awful convoluted way to tell a guy that his little stupid argument about abiogenesis was bullshit.
The mechanism which enabled this destructive possibility was, of course, discovered by scientists, albeit at a time when such a project would have received almost universal public support, given that it was known that the Nazis were working on similar weapons. Only those inexperienced in game theory would have played a high moral ground there. However, ultimately, enough of these devices were made to destroy our entire infrastructure and take...
Yeah, well, it sort of did work out, though, for the Japanese, didn't it? I mean, realistically, yeah, I mean, it was really bad, you know, people dying in the war, but they did pretty good after the war, you know, and they got a nice little civilization and picked up some of our better habits and kept some of their traditions, and, you know, it sort of worked out for them. Losing sometimes, you know, you win when you lose sometimes.
us back to the Stone Age. Thankfully, those who made the decisions were familiar with the no-win situation. Once summed up by Sagan as, it's like two sworn enemies, one with 3 matches, the other with 5, standing waist-deep in gasoline. Since then, our infrastructure has flourished and allowed us to achieve great things. This is the paradox of creationism. Without the first world infrastructure built on science, it's doubtful whether they would live long enough to field an opinion on the subject.
You know, he always talks about science like it's some sort of external force that comes down like a god and saves humanity. All science is revealing the truth. The God theory is an old scientific theory. That's all it is. It's the really, really old science. That's what the old scientists did. They said, let's try to find God's footprints, or, you know, let's try to find an explanation for this mess. And, yeah, the only reasonable explanation thousands of years ago was somebody goddamn did it. Yeah, and so it's an old dumb idea, and it just got stuck in people's heads as a tradition. And they just won't let go of it because they've been threatened that if you let go of it, we're going to punish you and burn you in hell. And so they're afraid. It's like stepping on a line in the crack in the sidewalk, or black cats and ladders, and people are just superstitious little idiots. And that's all it comes down to. So let's argue being a superstitious old scientist and just try to explain that the new science is the round worldy thing, and you don't have to cling to this old dumb idea.
And even if they did, it's doubtful whether they would have enough time left, after trying to find enough food to survive the winter, to preach the evils that science brings by leading people away from their particular brand of creationism. Basically, the only reason...
Well, I mean, this argument only goes so far, too. I mean, obviously the Quakers and stuff have found a way to do their little religious-y thing and live a kind of modest and efficient life, so it is possible to do that theoretically.
We have people like preachers is because our infrastructure feeds, waters and keeps these people clean, warm and healthy. And then in an act of supreme ingratitude, they use the time that they would have otherwise spent trying to stave off starvation to it.
Oh, this is such bullshit. I mean, this is like some capitalist land. The only way we'll have a good life is because of the capitalists, and the owners had to capitalize everything, and blah, 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 blah. And if it wasn't for the kings, we wouldn't have any kind of life. I mean, what a pile of crap. Okay, there's different ways that we can get someplace, and you know, these guys aren't anti-science. They're not anti-progress. They wouldn't say, don't go to the moon. I don't think they'd necessarily vote against it. They wouldn't, they're not gonna. A lot of them are for nuclear power. Come on. So this argument is going a little too far. Okay, they're against one branch of science, not all science.
Hack the very scientific method responsible for providing their last meal.
That's right. Love of God and compassion and empathy leads you to a very glorious place. Science leads you to killing people.
Yeah. Good word. Good word.
Yeah, well, see, again, what's the point of arguing with that kind of nonsense? Because that's all it's built out of. It's just some notion that it's good for people to believe in Donald Duck. Yeah, somebody can make that argument and just make the counter argument that Donald Duck is a fucking moron and we can do better than that.
However, if it were merely ingratitude, I wouldn't have too much trouble with creationism. But by attacking the scientific method, they undermine our ability to harden and advance the infrastructure of our civilization. Few who have insight into the vulnerability of life on Earth, let alone the knife edge our civilization is balanced on, would be bold enough to claim that we are capable of surviving any challenge thrown at us.
I don't even know what that means. Creationists are dangerous, but also scientists are kind of dangerous too. Some of them are goddamn dangerous. Some of them come up with some really wacky ideas. So this is kind of bogus.
Civilization has been good to me, and I want it to live, thrive, and survive long beyond my life.
So by civilization, what do you mean? Like the idea where the rich exploit the poor? Because that's basically what's built your civilization. I don't think you can name a civilization, an empire, a place where people are living good, where, the truth is they got there through a big, fat, juicy hunk of cheat. All right? I mean, come on. England exploited the fucking world, and North America, when it got its hands on the reins, it did the same thing, and it went out and just exploited the shit out of people. So let's not glorify our civilization. It's come at a pretty high price.
Life, let alone intelligent life, is so exceptionally rare in our universe.
How do you know? How do you know that answer? Exceptionally rare in our universe. Now, I would agree that, it's at least rare. At least. That's the minimum. Okay? But how do you know it even gets to rare? How do you know it's like we're not the only ones?
That it would be a tragedy, almost the most abhorrent crime to let such a gem fail, simply because mine stood idle while snake oil salesmen...
Right, so versus the snake oil, we got the McDonald's oil, and we got the Walmart oil, and we got all the other oil that's being sold out there. And you're selling some sort of beauty in the universe. Like everybody should go out and get themselves a, I don't know, a bag of, space gas and go, have a good time. What the fuck? Okay, I mean, this, the fact that we got intelligence is kind of, it's kind of neat. But life itself is a bag of shit. And you can keep pretending because a crow can pull something out of a fucking goddamn beaker that life is all kick-ass, but it really isn't. That crow's dead, and it probably died shitty. And that's just the truth.
Sold the comfortable fantasy that an invisible super sky daddy would take care of all of their problems if they telepathically told them that they loved him.
Yeah, well, it's just as lame for you to be arguing that somehow we're accomplishing something because we're born horny for a bunch of crap that really doesn't deserve our horniness. That we're just addicted idiots who just keep whapping a wheel and we're not going anywhere. I mean, we're on a treadmill to no place, and you're sitting there and glorifying it. So you're kind of silly too, in my opinion. Just as silly as this dork.
Those conmen and daydreamers intimidated by reality, whose vision does not extend beyond the blink of an eye of the...
Yeah, whatever. Like I said, you're pretty fucking goddamn blinded by your bullshit also. Your little beauty in the universe pile of crud.
Individual life and into the future of mankind.
Let me say something about Harry Potter.
He's got a little tiny penis. God told me. He's no good. It would never work. He could never fuck my boobs properly.
Warlocks are enemies of God.
Warlock.
And I don't...
They use their powers in all kinds of secret and malicious ways. Those warlocks do with their special powers and such. I mean, what is that, warlocks? Yeah, they actually have powers. They have little wands and stuff and make things happen. They put on their cloak of invisibility and they molest me when I'm sleeping. That damn Harry Potter. He tweaked on my
And what kind of
anus.
hero they are. They're an enemy of God. And had it been in the Old Testament, Harry Potter would have been put to death.
Oh, yeah, they would have stoned him, but he would have had his invisible cloak on, and they would have missed him with their stones, and then it would have been a whole complicated, let's go find Harry Potter guy. And, you know, such. It is funny. Oh, people are so fucking silly.
Those without the vision to understand that simply because our civilization looks stable to the eyes of a human, that they think that this means the status quo will persist indefinitely.
Oh, well, who would want that? I mean, oh, please. Oh, God, the horror, the horror. So anyway, yeah, we gotta do a lot better than the status quo.
Not only are these creationists willfully ignorant in acknowledging the quality of life that the scientific method has delivered them, they are
Yeah, I don't understand. He's showing a flood and showing us the quality of life. You know, the tsunami thing and all the other blights. Yes, whatever. It's done wonders. Chemotherapy is really fun.
willing to attack it and undermine the potential of our civilization to deal with the unknown challenges that it will undoubtedly face.
Yeah, right. Exactly. But the same old challenges. We'll just be cleaning up the survival mess. Oh, we got to survive. We got to survive. We all have to wear our nuclear, shielding, and we all have to whatever, blah, 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 become the mole people. And yeah, we have to use our technology and drill holes into the earth so we can live underground and blah, 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 blah. Accomplishing absolutely nothing.
They make real scientists waste their time dealing with the intentional disinformation sown by braying creationist arguments, specifically targeted at those who do not have the education to realize that these arguments were intellectually gutted decades ago. They are willing to jeopardize the future ability of our infrastructure and the survivability of our civilization simply so they can indulge in their comfortable fantasy.
Yeah, the old creation bomb. Oh my god, they creation bombed us. He's using the same video clip again. Yeah, anyway. So I don't think science is going to be able to fix that problem. Yeah, and it's not going to be able to fix the exploding sun thing in the end anyway, and we're not going to escape, and we got nowhere to go, and science sort of already knows that. There's no way to get us out of here. So all you can do is, plant your seed somewhere, and that's kind of silly. It's all an ego chase game that doesn't mean a goddamn thing, and you're just as deluded as these fuckwits.
Their religion may not have any morals or ethics about the future of our civilization, but I do.
Yeah, well, explain to me, what's the future of our civilization? What are we gonna do? What are we gonna do, really? Realistically. You're just gonna find new and innovative ways to, four-dimensional porn or some kind of bullshit. What the fuck are you gonna do? Really.
God was clearly too involved to give you any clear guidance on this. Allow a man whose magic would have made any Bronze Age miracles seem like cheap party stunts to give you a word of advice. Believe whatever you want to believe, but temper it with the perspective of the standard of living delivered to you by material.
Look, they're not arguing with our standard of living. Again, they're not arguing with automobiles. They're not arguing with any of that crap. They're arguing about abiogenesis and whether a god initiated the whole fucking stupid game. Ugh. So I don't see how this argues that. But what the fuck ever. I guess that's plexiglass. And that's some kind of metally thing. That might be magnesium there. Maybe that's a piece of magnesium. Piece of copper, I presume. That might be brass. Oh, that's brass over there. That's copper. This is copper brassy. This is aluminized copper. Yeah.
Materialistic science. Remember that science does not preclude you from indulging.
An electrical plug. Oh man, yeah, that was the peak of human technology. There we go, man. That's when we figured it all out. We made that little ooh face. Ooh, ooh, no, don't plug at me. Ooh.
In whatever fantasies blow your metaphorical skirt up. So do not hamstring those who dedicate their lives to the development.
Oh, I don't think they're hamstringing you that much, really. I mean, okay, they shouldn't have done the don't play with the fetusy thing. That's kind of a bullshit thing. But I don't think in the whole scheme of things they've really gotten in the way of scientists too much in the last 100 years. They really weren't that big a problem. They really didn't stop the old fucking moon rocket from getting off the ground. It didn't have a bunch of creationists hanging on top of it or anything.
Of the infrastructure we all rely on for our survival and for our quality of life, and which ultimately may hold the balance of the future existence of life on Earth.
Yeah, whatever. You're not gonna hold no existence thing. You just prolong the death. That's all you can do. We can just save ourselves till the next disaster and the next. Oh, and then that. That last one will finish us off anyway. Yeah, okay. So you'll survive the first couple of bullets. But you're dead. Yeah. And your survival might not be too fucking good. This is the truth. I mean, we got all this civilization shit, but, there's a lot of people not living too civilized. A cup of rice a day, sniffing some glue, that ain't much of a life. Nah, that's not much of a video. So anyway, that was just so overly done. I mean, that's just such a bizarre argument. Yeah, I mean, really. It's taking it to a strange and preposterous extreme. Obviously you don't want a whole world full of just ignorant creationists because, they're not going to be good for anything. Not going to know how to do anything. Not going to be able to build anything. Understand where they're coming from, at least, when you make your argument. And they're not challenging science. They really aren't. They're just desperately clinging to their little hopeful story because the alternative is rather bleak, and they're just not silly enough to invent some sort of artificial notion that nature is beautiful. They're not stupid enough to fall for that one. So it's God or ugly. That's their choice. God and heaven are ugly, disgusting, putrid truth. And I wish they would go for the truth, but I understand why it's not an easy sell. So anyway, another video. I don't know why I'm looking at this. I'll just do this. Yeah, there we go. I don't know why. Yeah, that's probably enough. Oh, look at that idiot. It's probably one of his videos, right? I mean, that's kind of rude. It is kind of, I get all this crap as I'm an evil, horrible person, and so somebody does this shit, and nobody probably complains. So bogus. So incredibly bogus. So anyway. It's probably enough. Yeah, it really is. 777 dislikes. Huh. Must be like Jesus freak did that. Ramen. I don't know what ramen. That's some kind of comment. Ramen. I don't know. Warlocks are enemies of God for the win. Yeah, well, whatever. It's kind of funny, the whole Bible thing, when Pharaoh was able to make serpents. And you're saying, well, how did Pharaoh make serpents exactly? How did his serpents fight God's serpents? I mean, it is kind of funny. Like, where did Pharaoh get his power from if he wasn't a god? So it is kind of, what the fuck is that shit? I mean, God got into a parlor trick war with Pharaoh. That doesn't make any sense. Does it? Does that really make any sense? I mean, that God would sit there and get into a parlor trick contest and make a snake that ate Pharaoh's snake. I mean, you just sit there and you say, people can't believe this shit. They just can't fall for this, can they? I mean, really? That the stake of billions of people is at risk and they're going to have a snake eating contest? to decide the fate of the human race. It is just. And there was no windows on Noah's Ark. Why would you build an ark with no fucking windows? Doesn't make any fucking sense. Anyway, okay. Till next time.